Ludicrous feed is proudly sponsored by Carloop, data to empower Australia's EV revolution. Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us. Behind me is the BYD Sealion 6 PHEV, which I've just picked up here in Sydney, Australia. I've got it for the next 5 days to review for you guys, so let's go inside and check it out. All right, so let's pop inside. We'll have a chat inside the vehicle. Okay, so we're inside the BYD Sealion 6, and there are a few things I want to do in this review. Number one is to put into practice what BYD are telling us in theory that this PHEV can do. And that is that day to day it is basically an EV where it can run around on the electric powertrain purely without having to engage the petrol engine if you run it on EV mode. Secondly, to see what happens when the battery does run down in charge to say 25%. Because at that threshold, apparently, then the engine starts to generate charge and electricity into the traction battery to fill it up, and that way it can keep running on the electric powertrain. Secondly, of course, is to do our usual walkthrough and walk around in the interior and exterior and go through the infotainment system as well. Those of you who follow my channel will know that I own a BYD Seal, so I'm fairly familiar with the BYD ecosystem and environment, and I'll give you my thoughts as to how it compares with my BYD Seal in terms of how it drives and also how it looks and feels as a car in general as well. Okay, so I've got the dynamic variant, which in Australia means that it's a front-wheel drive vehicle only. There is a premium variant as well, which apparently has dual motors, so one in the rear, one in the front. I'll try and get a loan of the premium version too later on, but for this week, for the next 5 days at least, which is what BYD allow us to loan these cars for, I will be doing a review of this dynamic version, which is a front-wheel drive vehicle. As you can see from the schematic here, the battery connects to the front axle and the engine also connects to the front axle as well. You can see that EV mode is on at the moment. If you switch it to HEV mode, then it says HEV there. So
many hours later.
Okay, so I don't often review plug-in hybrids or hybrids. In fact, I've only pretty much reviewed one hybrid in the past. I think I had a look at the Mitsubishi Outlander PHEV many years ago when I first started this channel, but this will be the first plug-in hybrid EV I've properly reviewed. Now I did this because I was curious as to why this is suddenly the top-selling PHEV in Australia. And for the BYD brand, this has actually eclipsed the Atto 3 and the BYD Seal in terms of their sales. So obviously BYD are happy with their lineup. And they're promoting it as a dual-mode intelligent vehicle. So essentially they're telling me that this is a EV-first vehicle that's been designed that way with a petrol backup. That's their philosophy. And I guess this week I wanted to demonstrate that and test it to see whether their theory is true when it comes to practice or reality. And this is day number 3, I think, or day 3 of my loan out of 5. So I'll tell you what I know and what else I need to test, and I'll do some of that testing later in this video. Obviously, with a 5-day loan, I can't possibly go through every single aspect of this car. It's just impossible, right? I need to be an owner to actually appreciate the finer details of this vehicle. So if you're a BYD Sealion 6 owner, or you've had this for a few months now, leave a comment below in the comment section. Tell me what else I've missed and what else you've discovered as well in your journey. Obviously, for more details and more pro tips on how to get the best out of this vehicle, there are plenty of social media channels and forums out there to get more information, but hopefully this will serve as an introduction for you if you are considering this PHEV as a bit of a gateway to owning an electric vehicle one day. I will be hopefully reviewing the Sealion 7, which is the full electric vehicle version of this car. I did a quick test drive in China when I was there with BYD in September 2024, so check those videos out as well. Okay, so to understand how this car works, I'm going to bring up the energy screen, which I created as a shortcut here, so you can bring that up very quickly. And when I go for my test drive, you'll see the powertrain in action, or a schematic of the powertrain in action, just showing you what's actually driving the car, whether it's the electric powertrain, whether it's the engine. Is the engine doing anything at the time that I'm driving, or is it all being driven by the battery? So we'll show you that on my test drive. But what I will tell you now in theory is that there are 2 major modes you can run this car in, right? So there's the EV mode here, which you can flick up. And when you do that, on the instrument cluster screen, you'll see that it flicks over to EV mode. And then you can also flick it down to HEV mode. And then you can see on the cluster screen HEV mode. Now, in general, when you flick it to EV mode, it essentially behaves like any EV I've ever reviewed, right? So it'll use the electric motor, it'll use the battery to supply the electric motor for, pretty much all of your drive in EV mode. with the exception that if you push the throttle all the way down to the floor, as I'll show you on my drive, with that, you can feel that extra bit of depression, and with that, you'll feel the engine actually kick in. It'll actually supply a bit of charge or via the generator to the battery. So I found that quite interesting this week. I'll demonstrate that later on in my drive. Okay, so in EV mode, it'll drive like an EV, regular electric vehicle. It'll go from 100 to 25%, no problem. If you just don't push the throttle all the way down, it'll regen brake. It'll just do all those things you've seen me do in EVs in the past. All these settings here, particularly this one, doesn't apply to EV mode. So you can flick this to your heart's content anywhere you like, auto save, whatever. It won't affect really EV mode, with the exception that it'll drain the battery down to 25, and then it'll flick over to HEV mode by itself. If you want that extra 5% down from 25 to 5, what you can actually do is, I'll show you. So you can actually hold the EV mode up for a few seconds, and you'll see, I'll just go over here to the cluster screen. So I'm going to flick up for a few seconds, and you'll see that it'll flick over to EV Eco mode, right? And I've been told, and I'll test that today, or at least in the next couple of days, and I'll show you on the video, that it will give you that extra 5% to get home to start charging your car. So that's quite a nice little feature. I haven't tested it yet, but I will hopefully have that on camera for you later on. Okay, so that's EV mode. Let's talk about HEV mode now. So HEV mode, there's actually two settings. So I'll just flick it down to HEV mode. With HEV mode, you can actually have it on auto or save. Now in auto mode, the car will essentially determine for you what the best powertrain to use. Now in my experience so far in the last few days, when I've had it on HEV mode, it'll essentially drain the battery down from 100 to 25% without much intervention, except for a couple of times when you're possibly driving at higher speeds. Now BYD always tell me it's 80 kilometers an hour or over, but in my experience so far, even with 60 kilometers an hour and over, it'll sometimes flick over to engine mode, where engine will start supplying either the wheels or start charging the battery. That's what I found so far. I'll try and demonstrate that today. But in general, if you just drive around the city at top speed of 60 kilometers an hour, it'll act like an EV. It'll drain the battery from 100 to 25%. What I don't know, and I'll try and test that later on too, is what happens when you do get to 25 and you've got this SOC setting at 25. So I don't know whether it'll just keep charging the battery at that 25% level, or it'll maybe bring you to safety somewhere else. I don't know at this stage, so I'll let you know as the video goes on. But that's essentially auto HEV mode, from 100 to 25%, act as an EV, use the petrol engine powertrain if needed. Now save is interesting. So if you flick it to save, right, you can essentially tell the car what you're comfortable with. So for example, if you are only comfortable with driving it to say 50% safety, where you are not happy if the electric powertrain drops below 50, then what happens is that if you start the car with 100% charge, it will drain the battery to 50, and then the petrol engine will start to act as a generator and supply charge to the battery to keep it at 50%. And again, I'll demonstrate that in the video later on. So in summary, HEV Save Mode, set it to whatever level you like, for example 50%, it'll drain the battery from 100 to 50 and then keep the charge at 50% no matter what you do with the vehicle thereafter. So I guess one of my aims with my further testing is to see what happens at 25%. What happens exactly with, particularly with auto mode or even save mode, what happens to the car? Does the car basically run the engine to the wheels, to the front axles, and also provide charge via the generator to the battery at the same time to keep it at 25%? Or does it charge the car up to a predetermined safety level, which I don't know what is at this stage? So I will try to test that later on for you in the test drive. Furthermore, I also want to test with you what happens with the V2L when you're down to 25%. Does the petrol engine create charge to the battery via the generator to supply the V2L at the same time? So stay tuned for that. All right, so let's take a walk around the BYD Sealion 6. This is the dynamic variant, so this is the base model. So just starting from the front here, you can see it shares the same design philosophy as the other Ocean series export vehicles from BYD, including the Seal and the Atto 3, of course. I do like the lines across here. That's quite a nice bit of detail. Front bumper camera, got the plate as well, nicely fitting with the rest of the vehicle. Ultrasonic sensors, BYD logo. Look at that, it's quite a nice detail here on the lights. Almost like raindrops or water drops there. Daytime running lights across the front there. Nice bit of detail here as well. No side curtains. And running across, we should show you the air intake as well down there, for both the motor as well as the engine, because this is a plug-in hybrid, of course. And then running on GT Comfort, Indonesian brand with headquarters in Singapore. And this is 235/50R 19-inch, both front and back. Plastic trim around the fenders and across the skirting as well down the bottom. Nice trim there as well, chrome trim. And the door handles aren't flush with the vehicle. Side mirrors, we've got a camera there, so there is a 360 view too. And light signature there. Blind spot monitor. Across the top here, we've got roof rails, glass roof with sunshade. Nice chrome trim across the top here. Got a C-pillar, D-pillar window. This is the petrol cap on this side, which I won't show you. It's a standard petrol cap. BYD Tech with some more raindrop type motif. Light signature with the light bar across the back. Rear wiper, which I like. A bit of a sporty lip here as well, with the brake light across. We've got a camera down here as well. A bit more chrome trim to up the back. Quite a large vehicle, 4.775 meters in length compared to Model Y, which is 4.75, so slightly bigger, and also slightly taller in height as well when compared to Tesla Model Y and BYD Atto 3. More detail across the back here, BYD Sealion 6. And then this DMI signifies that this is indeed dual mode intelligence, or what they use to badge their PHEVs, plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. The BYD Shark 6, which is their ute, is DMO, dual mode off-road. Bit more detail down here as well. There's a light just there underneath the plate, which also fits quite nicely as well. They've certainly improved that, which is nice. And just walking around this side, this is the charge port on this side. CCS2. It does charge DC, I think, at about 18 kilowatts. I probably wouldn't bother too much with DC unless you absolutely have to. Single-phase AC charging is probably adequate, considering the size of the battery, 18 kilowatt hours, which again I'll go through later on in the technical specs. Should be enough to charge overnight each day to make use of the electric powertrain in the city. And the back of the car also GT 19-inch wheels, same as the front. Also got the NFC tap area here as well for digital key and key card. For those who really want an electric Sealion, the Sealion 7 is due to come to Australia, hopefully either later 2024 or early 2025. So we'll definitely do a review of that vehicle. But for the meantime, for those who really need that extra bit of range that the petrol part of this vehicle supplies, then the BYD Sealion 6 is a nice compromise, but still keeping to the electric powertrain for most of the drive in the city during the day. So what I'll do is I'll have a look at the bonnet first, to see whether we can see glimpses of the petrol drivetrain. There you go, DMI Tech. Those of you who want more details about this hybrid petrol electric powertrain, I did do a video when I was in Shenzhen, China, just showing you what that component looks like. So it's a conglomerate of obviously both the engine and the electric motor as well, all in one, and seems to work relatively seamlessly from my experience so far here in Sydney for this very short line of the Sealion 6. No storage, of course, as you can see. Ooh, shuts with one close, interesting. All right, let's go have a glimpse of the boot, automatic trunk or boot opening. So this press car came with a 10 amp charger, also a V2L connector as well. So I might test that just later on in this video too. Got a speaker here, privacy screen here, which can be obviously closed like that and taken out as well. Let me just show you real quick. There you go, that can be removed for extra height if needed. And open up the subfloor. You've got an emergency kit down here as well. And a tiny bit of side storage here too. Got my trusty Callaway Big Bertha here, which is 1.2 meters in length. And those of you who play golf or just want to know about storage, it does fit diagonally across the boot like that. So you can fit your golf clubs, including the driver, if needed. It's good to know. So 60-40 split, child restraint anchors as well, supplied for all three seats. And you can close the boot or lock the boot from here. Nice touch. All right, so let's hop inside the interior now. We'll start with the second row. Let's check the door close down. It's actually pretty solid, I've got to say. There you go, that sounds pretty good. All right, let's have a look at the second row to start with, like I said. So infinity speakers, the quality is, I don't know, probably average at best. Not crisp enough for my liking, but you know, it does the job if you just listen to the radio, I guess. Window control, trim here, nice red stitching, very reminiscent of the BYD Atto 3 throughout. Hard plastic here, but it is soft up here though. And powered windows as well. Down here in the seats itself, 60-40 split, like I said earlier. Headrest can be raised, and we've got cup holders in the center armrest too, which is nice. Up if you need extra space. Two-tone, nice bit of contrast. Detail on the scuff plate here, BYD, and flat floor, which I love as an EV owner. Lovely magazine sleeve, and sporty look-through seats too. And in classic BYD styling, we've got USB-A and USB-C down here. Extra bit of storage here too. Hard plastic there, bit of piano black there. We'll go through the front very shortly. And across the back here, extra window between the C and D pillars. We've got a handle, hook, got reading lights, which I don't think you can push. Oh no, you can, well, change the intensity, so that's a bit less, that's a bit more. And we've got the sunshade as well, which, let me just open up so I can show you what that looks like. There we go, so a bit more of a panoramic view for those who need it. It's got a bar in between there, so this does open as well. Let me show you that. You can bend it like that, or you can open it up all the way. Or you can stop it anytime you like as well. So that's good to know. But what's great is that you can shut this sunroof if needed during a hot Australian summer. All right, so that is the second row. Got dual air conditioning vents here too, which can be shut if needed. And pretty roomy, got to say. I've just got my seat there for my position, driving position. And then back here, we've got, let's see, 1, 2, 2.5 fists between my knees and the back of the front seat. I'm 175 centimeters and probably shrinking every day. Maybe a bit shorter these days, but certainly enough leg room for my stature. Okay, so that is the second row. Let's go hop inside the front row. So like the Seal and Atto 3, it comes with a proximity fob, and you can certainly unlock and lock the door this way too. Or tap the digital key on the wing mirror, like I showed you earlier, or use your digital key from your Apple iPhone and some Android devices, and also the Apple Watch from Series 5 onward. Here is the armrest, again, nice detail there, and the usual side controls here with the wing mirror controls, and also window controls and window lock as well, which I locked earlier. Lock, unlock, and opening the boot here as well. Nice door bin here for drink holders and so on. Soft materials here, soft there, gets hard there, bit of piano black throughout, and chrome trim too. That's nice and soft up the top here on the dash. And nice detail here with the scuff plate. Powered seat controls. Before I forget, let's have a look at the passenger side seat controls. Yep, also powered on the passenger side, even though this is the dynamic base variant. No lumbar support though, as you can see. So two-tone seats with the red or orange highlights, very much like the Atto 3. And let's hop inside now. Car. You saw that earlier with the double pull with the bonnet. Open the petrol cover from here. Headlight level control as well. It's a right-hand indicate. Many of you will like that. And automatic headlights as well from here. And you can adjust the trip computer as well from this side. With the trip computer, just quickly, you can actually toggle between the different settings as well. So HEV setting, EV setting, and the odometer, and also 2 trip computers too, which is great. Interesting, out of the 6,800 kilometers this press car has driven, a lot of it has actually been on HEV mode or hybrid mode, which I've already gone through, of course, earlier on. And then probably 2/3, 1/3 between HEV and EV trip. Okay, so air conditioning vents, probably less funky than the Atto 3 in terms of styling, right? You see throughout the car, it looks pretty muted, a bit more classic than the Atto 3. Closer to the Atto 3 styling than the Seal styling. Brush metal here, across there, that looks quite classy. Just contrasting with the piano black and the chrome trim. This is all soft here, by the way, as well. This is also soft, looks hard, but it is soft covering up here. And the screen still rotates like that. I'll just get it off Apple CarPlay mode. Still rotates, but it doesn't cover the air conditioning vents. Wireless charging pad. And then we've got the gear shift here, which is very much like my Seal. The Atto 3 looks a bit different. Some air conditioning settings, and then you must press the start-stop button. This is the drive mode between the four of them. So we've got Sport, Snowfield, Eco. So 4 modes there. I'll leave it on normal. And then this is the EV HEV mode, which I've already gone through. And then park button, volume control, turn the screen on and off, and auto hold as well, if needed. Okay, let's put the screen back. We'll keep going with the storage since we're on a roll. We've got drink holders here, and then a large storage compartment down here as well. This is interesting. This has been supplied with the car. Looks like you can break the glass if needed with this thing, so break the glass, bit of extra safety. And then we're almost done. We've got a glove box here. Visors. Hello. This is extend out. No, it doesn't extend. Looks like there's a microphone here as well on this side, as well as the passenger side. And then, look at this, glasses holder. Nice. A little bit plasticky, but hey, does the job. Let me just test with my reading glasses. Just pop in there. Yeah, fits nicely. It's good to know. And then reading lights there, on and off. And then the sunshade I showed you earlier as well. And just down here below the center console, I love this. Any car with the center storage like this, I really appreciate putting all my stuff there. And then it's also got a USB-A, USB-C charger, and a micro SD card reader, and in the far corner, a 12-volt socket. All right, so let's quickly walk through the infotainment screen. I won't do too much because I've done these walkthroughs before in my BYD Seal, particularly also the Atto 3 and Dolphin, so check out those videos. But I will highlight to you the features specific to this car. There's also a nice towing feature as well, which I've not seen before. And just a reminder that there's Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, both wired and wireless as well. Over-the-air software updates are provided free of charge by BYD. Thankfully, the ADAS settings have been fine-tuned for this vehicle. I've not noticed anything too untoward or annoying so far in the last few days I've had this vehicle. Energy settings I've gone through already in the first part of this video. Again, as a reminder, this really only applies for the HEV settings. I wouldn't worry about it too much if you're going to drive it on EV mode most of the time. No one-pedal driving, have it on high most of the time, which is fine. And then I have it on dynamic range, so it tells me roughly how much I've got left with the current way I'm driving. The side mirrors are auto-fold, and also they flip while reversing, which is really good. And then on the charge settings, you've got a scheduler, which is fantastic. Also got intelligent charging port immobilizer, which means that for security reasons, the charge cable cannot be pulled from the car while it's charging, but it can be removed once it's 100% charged. Okay, so there's V2L settings as well, so there we go, vehicle to load on and off. This is interesting. Start the engine to generate electricity when the battery is too low. Please keep the vehicle ventilated, so obviously charge it outside if you can. So again, we'll test that when the battery is 25% or less. Consumption, so cumulative, so the life of this vehicle over 6,830 kilometers, 2.9 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, 4.6 liters per 100 kilometers so far in terms of fuel efficiency. And the range of this car is 981 kilometers currently, which correlates with the instrument cluster there, 981, combined both fuel and electricity. Fuel consumption, 217.7 liters in petrol so far. Interesting, V2L charge, so 161 kilowatt hours of electricity has been used from this car to provide charge as V2L, driving time, average speed. And then you've got the consumption curve on this screen as well. You can see there all electricity and fuel. So average electricity consumption, 10.2 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, which is actually pretty good. And then fuel consumption, 1.4 liters as well. Okay, so this is the 360 camera, which you can bring up here from the steering column. And they're, again, very good cameras from my experience from owning a BYD. 3D camera as well, you can swivel that around. And what's interesting too is that you've actually got this tow setting. Look at this. So, you know, for towing, you can see if you are actually towing something, you can see the line that it's pulling there. And just a quick comment about the position of the screen. It's actually a bit tilted compared to my BYD Seal. I think the Seal is more upright, so just the viewing angle is a bit different to what I'm used to. Now the instrument cluster screen, which I'll go through along with the steering column controls, is actually integrated with the dash. You know, some of you like that. My Seal and the Atto 3 is different. The Atto 3 has a little small cluster screen just above the horn here, whereas the Seal has got a separate screen sort of mounted onto the dash, so it looks separate to the rest of the dash, whereas this one feels more integrated with the rest of the car. So let's go through the controls for the instrument cluster screen, so which you can flick through like that with this button here. So on this setting here, we've got the drivetrain schematic, which I'll talk about when I'm driving. You can flick through between fuel efficiency, cumulative efficiency as well, and then the tire pressures, that's LPK, liters per hour, not sure what that is, and then the approximate range of the drivetrains, so both electric and petrol. So what I found is that the electric powertrain of this car is fairly efficient. So when I first took delivery of this car on day one, it was 100%. I drove on that first day all the way down to 26%, and I got 79 kilometers of driving around Sydney on the north side of Sydney with hills. So you can calculate that theoretically, that's 105 kilometers, although the car will never let you drive down to less than 20%. So yeah, so 79 kilometers for a practical range of 75% of the battery is actually pretty good for day-to-day city driving. That's probably going to cover most of my day-to-day usage for my life here in Sydney. All right, so let's keep going. Fuel consumption, driving time, and plug-in amount, which we went through already in the screen earlier, and back to the drivetrain screen. Now, from memory, having owned my Seal for a while, you can actually change the interface of the telemetry here. So you can just have the numbers, or you can have a graphic indication of whether you're charging the vehicle by regen braking or using power from the battery or motor at the same time. And then the speedometer here is on the right-hand side. You've got telemetry also for cruise control, which I'll show you on the highway later on. And then the odometer's down here as well. And then you can see the state of charge of the vehicle, currently 43%. You can also change that to approximate range left. And then on this side is the petrol gauge indicator. And then the rest of the steering wheel, it's not quite round. There's a bit of a flat part here. You can still hold it comfortably at 9 and 3. Rest your fingers behind here. You can just see that through there. So cruise control settings on this side, which I'll show you in the drive part of this video, and then some more buttons here as well. Voice activated, phone, volume control on this side as well. Bring up the cameras and change the orientation of the screen. Nice big horn in the middle there, BYD logo. All right, so thanks to Riz from Carloop, who has supplied me with some key technical specifications for this vehicle. We'll run through that now, and then we'll do a comparison with the next best-selling PHEV in Australia, which is the Mitsubishi Outlander PHEV. So we'll do that later on. But let's go through some of the specs now of this car. So BYD Sealion 6, both dynamic and premium, 2024 models, both of course made in the People's Republic of China. Australian RRP starts at $48,990 for this car, and then ramps up by another $4,000 to the premium variant, $52,990. Approximate driveway price at about $3,000 or $4,000 to each of those variants. So vehicle and battery warranty, 6 and 8 years respectively, 160,000 and 150,000 kilometers range for both variants. That's pretty standard across the BYD fleet, including my own Seal. Servicing costs $1,540 capped for both variants across 5 years. Range 92 kilometers for the dynamic variant and 81 for the premium, although like I said, I managed to get close to 105 if you count the entire range of the battery, although practically speaking 79 kilometers from 100 to 25%. Claimed efficiency 169 or 179 watt hours per kilometer, and nominal capacity of the battery is 18.32 kilowatt hours, of course a BYD blade battery. Charge power is 7 kilowatts for AC and 18 kilowatts for DC. Like I said, I probably wouldn't use DC charging for this vehicle. 18 is probably not worth it unless you absolutely have to charge this car. But I think the best practice is to charge this car with AC every night before you drive again. Obviously, electric powertrain for city driving is far more efficient, which most people will use this car for. So if you want to get the best out of this car, charge with electricity each night, and then use the petrol if you need to on the highway. So tow capacity of 1,300 kilograms, braked and 750 unbraked. That's pretty standard. 5-star and cap rating, 0 to 100 in 8.5 and 5.9 respectively, given that the premium variant is an all-wheel drive vehicle versus this, which is a front-wheel drive vehicle. 160 versus 238 kilowatts in power. That's a lot of power for the Sealion 6 Premium, and then 300 versus 550 Newton meters of torque between the two variants. Length, like I said, 4775 millimeters. That is definitely longer than the Tesla Model Y by about 2.5 centimeters. Model Y is 4750 millimeters, and also taller as well, 1670 millimeters. And that's taller than Model Y by almost 5 centimeters in height. And curb weight of 1940 for the dynamic variant, and the extra motor is going to make the premium variant 2.1 tons. All right, so let's now do a quick comparison of the BYD Sealion 6 up against the Mitsubishi Outlander. So we're looking at about $9,000 more expensive between the base variants, and up to $11,000 more expensive between the premium variants between the two cars. Mitsubishi seems to have a better warranty, 10-year, 200,000 kilometer vehicle warranty and 8-year, 160,000 kilometer battery warranty. Servicing costs pretty equivocal, slightly cheaper in the Mitsubishi. So interestingly, the Mitsubishi Outlander has a slightly larger battery pack, 20 kilowatt hours, but it is NMC of course. Single phase charging, slightly faster DC charging at 33 kilowatts, slightly more towing capacity as well, 1,600 kilograms braked. Keep in mind too that the Mitsubishi Outlander is all-wheel drive for even their entry-level model, but it's not as powerful as the BYD Sealion 6 all-wheel drive in terms of power and torque. The Mitsubishi Outlander is a smaller vehicle than the BYD Sealion 6 in terms of length at 4.71 meters, and that's even smaller than the Tesla Model Y. But it is a taller vehicle at 1.74 meters in height, and it's roughly about 2 tons in weight. Okay, so that is a lot of theory. You've seen me walk through the car, talk about the specs, talk about the theory behind the EV and HEV mode. What I'll do now is go for a drive on the city roads here in north of Sydney, and also go for a drive on the highway as well, particularly paying attention to what happens at top speed in EV mode and what happens when the battery runs down to 25%. So stay tuned, more coming up. Okay, so just driving just out of Chatswood now and trying to get onto the motorway. You can see that, at low speed, I'll just put it back onto normal mode. At low speed, EVs are probably the best because, they don't use much electricity to get around at low speed. You can idle basically with the car off. There's no petrol running in the background. So in the city, EVs, undoubtedly are probably the best to drive. And very quiet too, of course, as you can see. And this car's got enough torque to get out of a turn like this. A little bit torquey in terms of, if you're trying to get out quickly, particularly in the wet. It is front-wheel drive after all. Might be different in the all-wheel drive variant. I'll have to test that later on. But so in the city, just have it on EV mode or even HEV Auto Mode. It'll basically act like an EV most of the time. And as I said, in my experience this week, I've not had the petrol engine come on too much in the city at all. And look, like I said, in the city, when you're idling like this, all you hear is the aircon, maybe the music, but otherwise, no rumble of the petrol engine. So that's EV mode. There's nothing much more to it, except for when I'm on the highway, I'll just demonstrate what happens at top speed, or at fast speed rather, at 100 kilometers an hour, for example. Can I drive an EV mode at a high speed? I'm sure we'll find out very shortly. And of course, you'll get the full benefits of regenerative braking no matter what mode you choose, EV or HEV mode. So the philosophy of this car is that it's EV first with a petrol backup. It's supposed to, like a classic hybrid, like a Toyota hybrid. It's essentially a petrol car with a battery range extender, and their batteries tend to be smaller. And you don't have to plug in, of course, but you get a bigger battery pack in a plug-in hybrid like this. Okay, so that's EV mode. It's pretty straightforward. What I want to explore now is HEV mode. So let's go to HEV mode, and I'll flick this down now to HEV. You can probably just see HEV there. And I want to put it on save mode for the time being, and I'm going to drag it up to, say, a state of charge setting that's close to the current state of charge. So let's say 40%. Oop, let's go down a bit more. 40%. Okay, so at 39%. At 39%, what happens, right? Does the engine start to generate electricity to keep it at that charge? And already you can see it's pretty responsive. The engine is already starting to supply charge to the battery, along with the regen braking. That's what regen braking is. It supplies charge back into the battery. So that orange symbol there, you can see the engine starting to work. And it's going to keep my state of charge at 39%, right, throughout the drive. And I've experienced that this week. Every time I have it on save HEV mode, it'll do that. It'll just keep the charge at 39. You can probably just hear the rumble of the engine as a generator. It shouldn't affect the axle. If it drives the axle, you can see an extra line going from the engine to the motor, or the wheels rather. So, in HEV mode, it'll keep the charge at whatever, at the prescribed limit there, 39%. And it's already pretty close, so it's already starting to do that. Now, theoretically, if you have it on auto mode, right? So auto, like I said, it basically acts as an EV most of the time, where it will actually just drain it down to 25%. So there you go, it's disregarding my prescribed limit of 39%. It's not going to charge anymore. It's just going to run the car down to 25. I know I'm on a downhill, but I'll prove it once again when I'm driving uphill, that it will just keep driving the car using the electric powertrain. Sometimes I've noticed it does use petrol in higher speeds. When it needs a bit more torque, it'll add petrol or the engine to the axle, or rather to the generator. But I would say 95% of the time in auto HEV mode, it'll just drive like an EV. Okay, so now we're just passing the Lane Code River down the bottom of this road, and then we're now going to climb uphill, and in HEV mode, auto HEV mode, again acting like an EV, engine's not kicking in, it's just using the electric motor to drive uphill. And obviously if you have it on EV mode, it'll do the same thing. I'll just flick to EV mode now, same thing. There's no difference between EV mode and HEV auto mode most of the time. Oops, that's not the right toggle, that's the drive mode. Talking about HEV versus EV, like same for most of the time. Now what I found interesting was, like, as I said, if I depress the throttle all the way down, so watch this. See, that's an EV mode, right? I've just put my foot to the floor and the engine's starting to kick in to the battery, or generating the battery. Same thing. You can hear it, right? You can hear the engine now. It's still going. That's HEV mode. In fact, I flicked over to HEV mode very briefly. Look, see that? It's on HEV now. So it's even left EV mode to HEV mode. And then once I stop revving, so to speak, it'll go back to EV mode. So that's really quite interesting. And obviously on HEV mode, it'll do the same thing as well. You can hear the engine, right? I've depressed the throttle all the way down. Okay. So that's something interesting to note. All right. And so we're going to hit the M2 motorway very shortly, and then I will do some more testing at high speed. Okay, so just turning onto the M2 motorway now, and we'll obviously comment on the handling and the suspension as well at this high speed. So I've got it on EV mode, it's pure electric mode, and I'm going to drive up to the speed limit, which is 100 kilometers an hour. Obviously, we'll see whether it uses the engine at all. M2 has, you know, it's not completely flat, it's up and downhill, so you see some variation in the gradient, which is good. Okay, so far, all electric on EV mode, no problem. And let's even just pop on the cruise now. There you go, got it on cruise. No problem at all, even on the auto steer component. So you can even change how close you want the vehicle to follow the car behind, car in front. Now I suspect the self-driving component, or the intelligent part of this cruise control, was very similar to my BYD Sealion in that it's not perfect, but if you keep your hands on the wheel and eye on the road, it should be okay for the majority of your drive. So let's flick back to that monitoring screen. So again, all electric. The orange of the engine, as you saw earlier, has not kicked on at all. In fact, I'll even go a bit faster for you guys, just for an experiment. Going at 103. No problem. Try and get around this this Ford in front of us here. Again, you know, for BYD Shark 6, I'll try and get a loan of that as well, just to confirm it does the same thing, right? In terms of the dual mode technology. I hope I'm saying that right. It is DM something, dual mode. I'm pretty sure it's dual mode, either intelligent or off-road, depending on the variant. So I'm just going to go a bit faster. So 110, no problem. Still electric. Now, if I rev again like I did before, there you go. Now switching over to HEV, the engine comes on again. Back to EV once I let go of the throttle. Okay, so pretty straightforward. Those of you asked me whether EV can be driven at this high speed. There you go, there's your answer, it's yes. Alright, so things get interesting now when I flick it over to HEV mode. So this is on HEV Auto. Again, I think BYD should probably relabel this just for HEV, because when I first got the car it was confusing. I was like, why is this for EV mode? So they need like a HEV setting here. And again, on HEV Auto Mode, right, which is the hybrid mode, but at 100 kilometers an hour, still no engine. So I'm still going, 100, let's go 110. Okay, no, 110, it's overriding now. It's gone back to engine. Very interesting. But anything at 100, it's still all electric, even on a hybrid mode. Okay, so I'm revving a little bit. I'm not pushing it all the way to the floor. Revving a bit just to get past this caravan. And the engine is supplying charge to the battery, not to the axle. See, it's not supplying to the axle. Very interesting, isn't it? Okay, now I'm going at 100. Now I'm going at 100. Now the engine is supplying to the wheel. See that? Okay. So now it's decided, I've driven enough on the motorway at 100 that it deems that it's more efficient for it to use petrol and supply charge to the battery at the same time, right? Just get around this truck here. It's trying to merge. Wow, cycling on the motorway. I don't know. Anyway. So see, it's all, I guess, it's all intelligent, right? So I'm not controlling any of this. I'm not telling it to go, supply to the axle. I'm not telling it to supply the battery. It's just doing its own thing. Just deems whatever is more efficient at the time that it's driving. All part of this intelligent part of the DMI, right? See, now it's not supplying any charge to the battery. It's concentrating entirely on the axle. And now the battery is supplying, or it did for a little while, supplying charge to the motor. All very fascinating. I'd love to see the algorithm in the background, what BYD has programmed into this car as to when to use what. That would be a fascinating discussion to have. To speak to someone who really knows about how this car was designed. There you go, now it's doing both. It's doing this dual mode thing. Oh, well, it did for a little while. Now it's supplying charge. Can't keep up. Now it's all electric. Well, no, not quite. Now it's a bit of regen, isn't it? Now it's like it's all over the place, but in a good way. It's doing its thing. Okay, so that's auto HEV mode. Pretty straightforward, right? Well, not really. It's not straightforward. It's doing its thing, but I'm letting it do its thing. I'm not controlling any of it. Just enjoying the drive, and it's fairly seamless. I don't feel suddenly the engine kicking in. Like, it's all very smooth. And I guess I should probably comment on the ride quality. Let's see. Is there much feedback from the road? Not really. I don't really get much response to the steering wheel, which is fine. Probably makes for a smoother ride for me. Is there much roll at this speed? Again, not too bad. I've heard the suspension is being corrected for Australian roads. Saw an article in a couple of publications in Australia, so if those of you don't like the suspension enough, maybe possibly on the buoyant side, maybe, if anything. It's not firm by any means. So yeah, maybe a tiny bit of roll and play on the suspension. Okay, so that's auto. Let's see what happens when we just flick it to save, right? So save, like I said earlier, it's the battery wanting to keep it at your prescribed state of charge. So currently my state of charge is 33. My prescribed is 39, so let's see what happens. Just watch this for a while. Does the electric motor ever power the axle? I suspect not in save mode, because see, now you've got the engine supplying the axle and supplying the generator to try and charge up that battery to 39%. So very interesting. There you go. Now it's on. Now we're driving downhill. It's providing regen braking from the wheels to the motor, to the battery, and the engine's doing the same thing as well. If you listen very carefully, you can kind of hear what the engine's doing to some degree. So yeah, I can just, because I'm hearing out for it, I can hear the engine starting to provide power to the axles. Because the engine is only got a single reduction gear at a high ratio, So it'll only mimic like a fifth gear at high speed on the freeway like this. So low RPMs but high gear ratio to mimic that top gear. Okay, interesting. So see, the charge has gone up now, 35. It'll keep doing this for a while until it gets to my prescribed charge, right? Let's go. Let's see. Just bring it to 35. So exactly matching my current state of charge. Now, what happens? Does it behave more like auto mode, or does it sort of keep it at 35, maintain that charge? I suspect it'll just maintain that charge at 35 the whole time, and then supplying, you know, power to the motor. Sorry, supplying power to the axle as well. Now we're going downhill. It's doing both. Let's watch this for a while to see whether it actually goes past 35, or is it pretty exact in its nature. It'll just keep the charge at 35. Oh, you see that? So now that it's at 35, suddenly the battery is playing a role. For a bit anyway. Now it's charging again. Interesting, okay. So I suspect at the threshold of the prescription at 35, it'll waver between charging the battery and supplying to the motor, along with the engine doing its thing too. So, okay, there you go. Okay, so now I've dragged this down to 25% again, full state of charge, left it on Save HEV, and now you see the battery supplying the powertrain when we're going on a flat, or at least slightly downhill. So I reckon if I were to own this vehicle, not that to be honest with you, I probably wouldn't. I'd probably just drive an EV, because I'm fairly confident and comfortable with the way an EV drives now. But if I were to drive this vehicle, I would probably have it on auto HEV on the highway like this, and let the car just decide what's best. If I had a home charger, by the way, if I had a home charger, I could confidently charge at home every night, no problem. Or if I had somewhere at work to charge at, I'd probably do that, or leave it on EV mode most of the time. I don't know if I'd ever use this Save mode. I mean, if you are someone who wants to have a bit of electric charge in the car every time, just for safety, then yeah, prescribe it up to 50 or something, and then leave it on Save and let the car decide how to best drive it. But yeah, that's probably the way I drive it. Just leave it on either auto, HEV on the highway, or EV mode most of the time in town. Which I'll do now. Alright, so I've swung around and we're going to head back on the M2 in the opposite direction, back towards town. And we're going to live on the edge, everyone. Back on EV mode. And I'm going to drain this baby down all the way to 25%. Just flick it back onto energy so you guys can see what's happening. There we go. 28% currently. We've got 3% more to get down there. Let's do this. We've got this. Also, note too that someone told me that, probably you shouldn't leave the petrol in the car too long. I mean, I'm actually traditionally not a car person. I don't really know that much about petrol cars. I'm not sure if that's come through previously on my content, but if you know, I guess you know about fuel and cars and stuff, like what happens if you leave petrol in a car too long? Does it go stale? Can it not be used anymore? I mean, how long should you leave petrol in a car before, I don't know, can you empty it and then refuel it again? That's the issue with this car, right? Because if you drive on EV mode most of the time, you're not gonna run into the petrol part too much, right? The engine won't kick in too often. So the question is, with a 60-litre fuel tank, should you be using HEV Save Mode every now and then? So leave that in the comments below. Let me know. But look at this. We're now down to 26%. We're living on the edge. What happens at 25 with EV mode? And we'll try that escape mode as well, the EV Eco mode, just to get that extra 5% in the battery. So again, I'm going at 108, just a bit over to get over this car, and yeah, it's still all electric, no engine component at all, which is great in EV mode. Though I suppose some do say it's probably more efficient to drive on the engine at high speed. Alright, so we're at 25. We are living this in real time, everyone. Like I said to you earlier, I'm doing testing with you guys in real time, just to get past what I know so that we can experience this journey together. I put on cruise so I don't have to keep pumping my pedal. There you go, 102, that'll do. Alright, let's see what happens, eh? Oh, okay, so now switch back to HEV mode, so it was pretty seamless, apart from the fact that I can hear the engine now. But let's go to that EV escape mode. Okay, so I'm hanging onto the EV button, EV Eco mode. So, can we get down past 25? Let's see. It's back on EV mode, engine's gone. Go away, engine, we don't need you. Not today. For this test. EV Eco mode. We are in uncharted waters, everyone. 24! 24%. We're living on the edge. Take that. Get past 25, back to 25, bit of regen braking. But keep pushing that throttle. What happens if you rev a bit? Oh, look, I'm revving and the engine's not coming on. It's staying on EV Eco mode. I love it. Escape. See, I'm depressing the throttle all the way down as I did previously to engage the engine, nothing. 24%, everyone, 24%. Okay, I'll keep driving on this escape mode and I'll get it down to 20% for you guys and see what happens. Hi guys, we're back, 21%. What happens at 20%? Does it flick back to HEV mode? I suspect it will. No song and dance though, no warning on the screen. Just, it'll probably just do it by itself. The battery's still supplying to the motor, as you can see. But here we go, any time now, it'll flick back to HEV, I'm pretty sure. Alright, now we're down to 20%. Still on EV Eco. I gotta say the, oh, look at this, 19%. Oh, we are draining this all the way down. Okay. We are definitely in new territory here, everyone. I did not think we can go past 20. Right, this is going lower than I thought. Well, we'll just have to keep driving, everyone. We'll just have to keep driving. 18%. Wowee. Okay, maybe the threshold's even lower. I'm gonna keep driving this. By the way, just a quick comment about the ICC. Like with my Seal, like with the Atto 3, it's just not smooth enough, the auto steer component. Like, I'm just feeling this, not feedback, but like a lot of artificial feedback, right? It's like the car pulling me side to side to try and center. It's just not as smooth as other systems I've used in the past with other EVs. So yeah, BYD just need to fix their 3.0 platform with regards to the auto steer component. Alright, so I'll touch base again to see how low I can get with this EV Eco. 17%, it's just dropping and dropping. Alright, I'm going to try my luck in the North Connects tunnel now. Just run this down a bit more. I'm down to 15%, by the way. 15%. I did not think this was possible, but here we are. Okay, so at 15%, it's now back to HEV mode. So it's 16 now, but at 15%, that's when it flicked over to HEV. So okay, so now we've found the floor, 15% for this EV Eco mode before it has had enough and flicks back to HEV mode. Okay, so now we're going 106 on the M1 motorway here in Sydney. You can see now it's 21%, right? So in like 5 minutes, the generator has charged the car from 15 to 21%. So what's curious is that even when the car is idle now, because it's lower than 25%, the engine is actually still rumbling to provide electricity to charge the battery. So that's interesting to know when it's a very low state of charge. So I've just been observing the behaviour of this car for the last few minutes at this sort of edge case of 25%. I find there's not much difference between auto and save in the hybrid mode. Both settings, the car will try to maintain it at 25% because I've prescribed it at 25, right? Obviously if I bring it up to 50 or whatever, then it'll charge it up to 50 on save mode. But at 25%, which is the lowest prescribed setting, both auto and save, the behavior is very similar. It'll have a mix of trying to keep the charge at 25% using the engine as a generator, but when it's happy that it's around that 24%, then it may occasionally allow the battery to supply charge or supply power to the electric motor, to the axle. So again, that's all part of that intelligent part of the vehicle where it'll just do its own thing and use whatever algorithm that's been programmed into it to get your car moving in the most efficient way, but keeping the charge at your prescribed setting. Okay, so now you've seen me drive pretty much on the engine or the petrol powertrain for the last, 50 kilometers, right? You see now the efficiency of the electric powertrain is like in the negative territory, and the fuel efficiency is 4.7. So like very similar to, I guess, any other hybrid out there, like, say a Toyota Camry or a RAV4. And it's reflected here in my driving pattern because I've been testing this car, right? Just seeing what happens when it's like down to 25% level. And you can see how the fuel consumption there was quite high. And that was due to it charging the battery by the generator. And then once it was happy at 25% state of charge, then the electric powertrain started to do some work. And then the engine had a bit of a rest there. And in contrast, you can see that it's possible to drive this car entirely on the electric powertrain. As you can see in this example, in the last 50 kilometers, I barely used any petrol at all. It was driven entirely on the electric motor at 15.5 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, and I only used about 100 mils at most of petrol. So I think the moral of this story is that the more you drive on the electric powertrain, i.e. if you charge this car properly every night to 100%, then the more efficient this car becomes and the less reliant you are on fuel. Okay, so to summarize everything, if you're on EV mode, then you can drive from 100 to 25% and potentially lower to 15% if you switch to that eco mode, and it will just basically act as an electric vehicle the whole time. Even at high speed on the highway, you'll still use the electric motor. If you run it on HEV mode, on auto mode, pretty similar thing. It'll still act as an EV, except on the odd occasion where it'll potentially use the engine to run at high speed because the car deems it to be more efficient to run at a higher gear than it is to run the electric motor on the highway. And then on save mode, HEV Save Mode, it'll try to keep it at the prescribed percentage that you set it at under the settings there. So for example, if you set it at 50%, it'll do its very best to charge the battery using the engine generator to keep it at 50%. But up until then, so 100 to 50%, for example, it'll still act as an EV. But as you saw, where it gets interesting is down to that 25% level. That's when both HEV Auto and Save Mode will charge the battery via the generator to keep it at 25%, and then it'll alternate between the electric motor or the engine at high speed to keep the car moving. But certainly at low speeds in the city, no matter what mode you set it at, either EV mode or HEV mode, no matter what the state of charge is, it'll still use the electric motor first and foremost at low speed because that's what is most efficient when driving around town. With the caveat that, of course, at the lower state of charge, like 25% or lower, then the engine will use the generator to charge the battery to keep it at that 25% level. All right, everyone, well, thank you so much for watching. I hope that makes sense with my theory and then putting it into practice on both urban and highway at different speeds and different state of charge and the different modes, EV versus HEV mode. Of course, like I said, I can't possibly cover all scenarios because I've only had this car for 3 days and another 2 days to test this vehicle. That's how long BYD loan press cars out for. But of course, if you own this vehicle or if you know more about this car, make sure you leave a comment below to fill in the gaps and to correct anything I might have said wrongly or anything I might have missed as well during this video. So much appreciated. We learn from each other. I certainly learn a lot from you guys as well. Last test, of course, is to do the V2L testing with a low state of charge. So thanks so much for watching otherwise. Until next time, happy charging. Okay, so it's time for the V2L test. I've plugged in the V2L connector that's supplied with the car. And there it is on this end, and I plugged in my portable fridge freezer. And then on the cluster screen, it's showing discharge in progress. Battery is 25% at the moment, and discharging at 0.2 kilowatts. Alright, so now it's discharging at 2.1 kilowatts. You can hear it going in the background there. Let's see if it drops below 25%. Alright, so this is interesting. It's gone down to 24%. So below the threshold of what the car would accept for driving, right? Because we saw that 25% it started to flick over to HEV mode. Let's see what happens when we flick it over to start the engine to generate electricity when the battery is too low. Let's flick that on. All right, so this could actually take a little while. We're down to 23% with the hairdryer running for a little while now. So I don't suppose anyone else out there has tried to get it down to, like, say 10%. Does it even go that low? I wonder if 15% is the threshold, like what I showed you on the road there. If anyone has any insights on this, leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. And the engine hasn't started running yet, so yeah, I wonder what constitute as being too low. That's what I'm curious about. It may be the subject for another video.